Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Debbie Ngarewa-Packer is the Wahine co-leader of the Maori Party. Kia ora, Debbie. Welcome to the Beach FM General Election Show.
Too nice, and thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. At this show, Debbie, we like to get to know a bit more about people, their history and their background. So I want to take you right back to the beginning so we can get to know you a bit more. Can you tell me a little bit about your family background, where you were born and raised, and how that helped shape your politics, if that's possible?
Sure. So first of all, I'm of Ngarewa-Packer, you need descent, but my mother is Irish, and my Pakeha family are very highly opinionated Irish Pakeha.
Okay.
And my father is Maori, and my mum actually was the first Pakeha that ever had in the family. So I'm the first of first. I'm the first child. I'm the first born grandchild, and was raised in a three-generational home. And which consisted of my koko, my Maori grandfather, who was born in 1901.
Wow.
My mum and dad, and four siblings, and including myself. So, and I was raised in Pakeha, and came very much from a working family that worked in the freezer mix during the week, and worked and lived at the marae after hours and during the weekend. So, I was brought up in a very tight community where we thought going to New Plymouth or Wanganui an hour away was like going overseas. So I had a very, very happy and community-raised childhood. Round about my parents, actually it was my grandfather as well, my koko, were very adamant about education being the key to lifting us out of the freezing mix, because if you can appreciate in that period, it was very much a famine and feast lifestyle. So we very much lived off the sea and time one when the works were off, and lived that life. And so between my families and my dad, I think had about 10 brothers and sisters. They all contributed towards quite an aggressive education strategy, which was to send me to boarding school and get educated to again, as I said, they were focused on us not being reliant on freedom rich factory life.
Yeah,
because of the feast and famine impact that was had on our lives. So that went really well. By about 7th form, 1983, the Pakeha freedom closed, and I was brought back to do my 7th form at Pakeha High. And I guess in that period was probably where the first part of my politics were formed. I was brought up, as I said, very sheltered. My dad was a union man. My family was staunch Labour supporters, and in that period, as the freedom were going down, we saw a lot of businesses leave town. A lot of families who'd never, whose generations had been raised around Pakeha had left. Our marae became quite emptied out, from who would normally be the normal families there, keeping the home fires warm. And in that period where we had quite a few government interventions, PP schemes, there were a lot of businesses coming into the schools to sort of teach us, I guess, how to work in shoe factories and things, which, again, if that's what you wanted to do, that was great, but that's not what a lot of us really wanted to land.
Yeah.
In that period, there was quite an extra layer of stereotyping that happened, and we were being shoved into quite, I guess, uninspiring futures. And my family, I don't know if you've heard of the song, but it's 4 years. And my family and the community worked together to create the song, this Māori song, 4 year, that just went absolutely off on the charts.
Love that song.
And yeah, absolutely. And so all those the people who created that song, performed that song, are my immediate families and extended families and our whole community. And what we saw was, while we were being stereotyped with low socioeconomic end of the, I guess, in the end of the tunnel, things were like closing down on us. Came this amazing innovation and this amazing community driven. It was funded by our butcher, our local bookstore, our local mayor, got in behind us. It was an absolute example of the best unity of strength in the community against all odds. And so I guess that's a real pivotal time for me and for my politics. And I'm a real champion of communities and grassroots because I've lived to see how when often bureaucrats can miss the real uniqueness and strength that communities have, despite the labelling. So, I guess that's a little bit of where I've come from.
Well, adding on to that, some would consider that you'd had maybe a little bit of a difficult start in early adult life, being a single mother at age 19, juggling motherhood with a number of jobs to support your daughter. But then you went on to achieve academically, including qualifications from Stanford University, numerous senior management and governance roles. How did you manage through those early days, and how was that experience informed? How has that informed your journey in politics? I think you've hinted a little bit already.
Yes, I guess I was young, and I guess part of being in a sheltered life is you don't necessarily get your first partner choice right. And I had been raised again around this community that you do not rely on the state. If you've got a brain and you can work, you'll go out and you'll figure it out. So I took on 3 jobs actually. I was a cleaner, a waitress, and worked part-time at the bank and used that to support my continuation of adult tertiary learning. There was just no way that I was going to let life experiences and hiccups in my journey stop that focus that had been entrenched for me or ingrained by my parents. And I was really, I guess, I was quite dogmatic. It was in my family at that time, you didn't leave partners if things weren't going wrong. You still didn't leave them.
Yeah.
And quite often, I came from a community where even some of our aunties, were abused.
Oh gosh.
And you stuck it out for the sake of the children. I was just, I guess, luckily I was brought up, very loved, and I knew it wasn't an acceptable way to live. So I guess that hardship was. At times I'd go to bed at night and wonder who the heck was going to ring for which bill, and power would be paid over food, and it was a really tough time. But you never forget it. You never forget how much you progress through life. You never forget that sense of uncertainty and the sense of how it feels when you don't have choices. Yeah. And most importantly, that sense of shame, or waka-mā, which is what we call it in Maori.
Yeah.
The sense of shame when you've failed or not gone out to achieve what you were expected to. And so I have a real empathy and understanding of how the choices can be so fine and take us the right way and the wrong way, and understanding if we create an environment where you're too ashamed to ask for help or admit you've got things wrong, that you often will miss being able to help, and we then have the rise of complex social issues. But all that aside, so it was a very humbling life, and again, I guess the fact that I've lived this famine and feast life, created that resilience to be able to know where to go. But I could see, I hated being branded and stereotyped, and I guess I just had this absolute dogmatic attitude to not being a victim. So
Wonderful. Well, you're relatively new to national politics, but not locally. In 2008 you were appointed the first Wahine Deputy Mayor in South Taranaki District. Can you tell me more about your time there? Like, what did you take away from that experience? Did that perhaps prepare you for a stab at national politics?
I guess I'm probably not new in national politics on the side of the counter in the activist space that I'm on. So
sure.
I've championed a lot of national politics, including keeping our hospitals and regions open, keeping our schools open, and during multiple governments, I was also part of leading when Jenny Shipley made some pretty hard decisions about beneficiaries, and I mean, I've continued to be involved in national politics and the opposition of seabed mining. So I guess it's my first time experience trying to get on the other side of the counter. But from a regional perspective, Teddy I was put up by our community on the basis that we could see there was major infrastructure investments needed. There was sewage going into our rivers due to lack of investment in infrastructure. There was poor Maori community engagement. Therefore, they weren't connecting the dots of potential iwi partnerships to actually come up with ideas for the communities to continue to thrive.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot for our youth.
Yeah.
So in that period, we were able to get a Maori liaison support and recognition at a high senior management level. We were able to get the hub sports facilities done and remedial work and new work on infrastructure regarding the protection of our rivers. So it was really good. And again, I was the only Maori and I was probably the youngest by about 30 years.
Oh, my gosh.
It might be an exaggeration. But
okay, sounds good.
We came from very different backgrounds. So beside me were the farmers that were actually farming on land that was confiscated from my family.
Gosh.
So it was really interesting to see and learn their strategies as far as intergenerational investment and the way, I guess, that the other Tuki partner thought and acted like. So it was really good for me to be grown and challenged and to be in company and to, while we may have different roles, even out in our families, we had the same goal, which was the thriving of our community. So, it was really great. There's a lot of giving and taking, and you've got to be extremely focused. And I found it easy because, I'd always been raised in a values-based, is that, you respect other people's opinions. You don't have to agree, and quite often, 90% of the time I didn't.
Yeah.
But there was this respect that you were all there for the same goal, just came from different spheres of influence.
Yeah. Well, moving forward then, Debbie, as the co-leader of the Maori Party, can you outline briefly, because I want to get to some other questions here, can you outline your party's key philosophy for us? Yeah,
sure. I mean, I guess it's no different to the values I've probably been raised with within my family, which is about whānau, about whenua and wai, which is about respecting our roles as kaitiaki, respecting our roles to manaaki and look after each other and to look after our planet. And most importantly, as whanaunga, to respect across us as Māori, across us as a nation, the respect of whakapapa, and that each has their own tapu. So, very, very simple values, but really poignant values, especially now in a COVID, climate change era.
Yeah. You're standing in the, thank you for that, you're standing in the Maori electorate of, now I'm going to try and say this, Te Tahuaruru?
Yes, Te Tahuaruru, yep, well done.
Good, thank you, which covers the western part of North Island, including Harawhenua and the Kapiti Coast. In the last election, high-profile Howie Tamiti managed to get 40% of the electoral votes, not enough to win the seat, unfortunately, but only 15% of the party vote was for the Maori Party. Do you have the profile to win the seat, and how do you plan to attract more party votes this time around?
Yeah, I think we... Howie did really well. I think he fell shy of about 1,039 votes, which is really great considering that there was so much change, obviously being fought in the last election. I think what we've tended to do, we previously have done on profile and fame, and name recognition is extremely important. But I guess what we've done is emphasise, and if you have a look at the 7 candidates, we've brought about candidates who have been frontline workers and fighters, and known for the various kaupapa that represent the diversity of us as Māori. So it's a hard yatta, but I am confident certainly in the work that I do and the way that I've progressed around the community and how that's been supported. In saying that, you take nothing for granted. You've got to keep out there. The reach of our Māori electorates are huge. They're from Te Karuru all the way down, as far wide as Tāwhia, all the way down to Purirua. It's a huge mission.
It is large.
And for Māoris traditionally it's even harder because we're based off the values of, I need to see you face to face. I need to know that you're on the ground. I need to know that I can access you.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily about fame and profile like in a I guess a general role. It is actually about affinity, affiliation, and your ability to connect. So it's a big deal, and we've been working really hard.
Yeah, well, you've clearly just demonstrated that you're a hard worker. That's fantastic. One of the flagship programs of the Maori Party is the Whānau Ora, which most New Zealanders would agree has been a major success. Yet it clearly wasn't enough to help get the Maori Party re-elected at the last election. What do you think was the main reason for not getting back into Parliament then? And if successful this time, are there similar flagship programs that you'd hope to introduce?
Absolutely. I mean, Whānau Ora is, and I guess the beauty of the impact of the success of the party is the fact that Whānau Ora is still the only Māori, Haora development kaupapa of its scale that's been run by for Māori and supported by consecutive governments, which is great. We lost confidence from our voters, and there are a couple of reasons of going around and doing a review and certainly getting feedback. One was that we were too long with one party, which gave the impression, it didn't matter how hard working our MPs were at the times that they were, it gave the impression that we'd lost our own identity. So it was at the cost of our own identity and our own brand.
Yeah.
And I think also the depth of poverty had gotten so much worse, and the anger at seeing that what we were doing wasn't enough or wasn't connected. So I think that's just the shine of a new, upbeat, young Wahine Prime Minister who I think most could relate to. She didn't look like the stale, professional, politicians that often, had a disconnect. So I think it was about timing, but I also think, internally and we hear it still now, is that our people predominantly did not want us to be with National so long.
Right, yeah. Okay. And you probably saw, linking in the recent story that the former National and ACT Party leader, Don Brash, said he'd be keen for the Maori Party to die. How do you react to those sort of remarks?
Oh, my God. I haven't seen that, but I'm laughing because nothing he says sort of has any real impact.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe that he still gets oxygen. I think the thing, when you asked about our policies, and I think we're the only party that's come up with a policy for Māori in a post-COVID environment, which is to ensure that there's funds directed towards Māori initiatives. And that was based off the fact that we saw Māori stand up their own COVID responses in the first wave.
Yeah.
That was an absolute success model, often not funded by the state.
Yeah.
But what we did see was the beauty of the Māori culture, not just look after themselves, but look after everyone.
Yeah, that's
And I
beautiful.
know the one that I live here in Taranaki, we did exactly that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the shame that people like Brash miss, is that Māori wellness and Māori up against it. The Māori Battalion did it.
Yeah.
Up against the odds will protect everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone, not just Māori. And I think that the unfortunate thing for Brash is that Tāngata Whenua, which is what we are, a rights-based party, are not going anywhere. We're not going to die. And even when we do receive, ridiculous comments like that, we will still replace hate with love.
Good.
And look after our whole nation,
Yeah.
including people like Brent.
That's gorgeous. Okay, now some interesting questions here for you. This is just to get to know you a little bit more as a person.
Yeah.
Can you answer what first comes to mind, if you don't mind? Would you rather chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Rather be hot or cold?
Hot.
Beach or forest?
Beach.
Coffee or tea, Debbie?
Coffee.
Cat or dog?
Dog. Different dog.
Oh, have you got a dog?
Yes, I've got 2.
Oh.
16 books. That's the odd sheep. a cat too.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, Debbie, that's been an absolute delight talking with you today. I hope my pronunciations weren't too bad. This line may have been a little funny, so we may have to revisit the interview at some point, but that won't be a drama at all, I'm sure. But it's been an absolute pleasure having a chat to you today, Debbie.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Ngā mihi aroha.
Thank you so much.
Kia ora.
106.3 Beach FM.